Hello, welcome back to Emerge, the health podcast for busy, high performing women. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Swenson Ridley. I'm excited to be here. I feel like between travel and holidays and all the things, me getting my wallet stolen and all kinds of things in the last couple of weeks, I haven't done a solo show in a while. So I'm excited to be here. And what I have done some of in the last few weeks in June and then kind of in early July is I've had the opportunity to be on some other podcasts, which has been a lot of fun. It's, fun to go and just have conversation with other people. I enjoy doing it here, and it's a whole other thing to do it on someone else's show too. So what I wanted to talk about today actually came from one of those interviews, and I posted on social media about this a couple weeks ago, but I thought it bore a little more unpacking on a podcast episode. And that is, I was on this show called, it's not out yet, but I'll definitely share it, when it comes live. But it's called My Perfect Failure. And one of the questions that the host asked me had me really kind of confronted in a way in terms of looking at like what actually drives me. And this is a question, people have asked me throughout my life, like, well, what drives you? Why? And I've asked myself even like, why do I have to get the doctorate, or why do I have to be the one in charge? Why do I have to always push to like the highest level of something you possibly can? And his question was centered around, my first business, which I've shared a bit about on the show. It was large. It grew very quickly. In 5 years, it almost doubled or tripled every single year for 5 years until, our biggest year, we were just shy of 7 figures in gross revenue. And, that sounds all great. There's obviously other pieces and components that go into a business. But what he asked me was, did my home life, which I've also shared about, dealing with a lot of stress and trauma and a toxic environment at home. His question was, did that impact the success of my business? And I immediately was like, yes, absolutely. And the reasoning was, I recognized that I was being driven by something completely unhealthy. And that was just a desire to not be home because it wasn't safe and I didn't want to deal with it. And it was hard and I didn't know how to deal with it. And so I just threw myself into working and working more. And I would easily pull 12 to 13-hour days with my infant son along. And, we took a 2-hour lunch break and napped. And like, that's just what we did. And we were always at the office. There wasn't even a time period where I separated from my husband and moved into my office and realized after 2 months that that was really unhealthy, like beyond where I already was at, because I literally never stopped working when we were living there. And, it was good. I recognized that. But I was thinking about this in the context, and I'm not sure if this analogy is going to work or not, but we're going to try it out. One of my son's favorite books is The Lorax, and it's one of the Dr. Seuss books. And if you're not familiar, I think most people are familiar with it because they made it into a movie. But The Lorax is this weird little creature that speaks for the trees and all of nature. And there's the guy who's telling the story is the Onceler, who is also the antagonist of the story. But the Onceler creates this huge empire knitting things called thneeds, which everyone eats. I could probably recite the entire Dr. Seuss book to you, but I won't do that. And I was thinking of it in this context because in the process of doing that, he cuts down all of the truffula trees and, pollutes the entire environment. And eventually, like, he can't grow anymore because he wasn't being conscious of, his resources. And the Onceler, or the Lorax, is kind of like the conscious. This is like, hey, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? And I was thinking about this in the context of, what drives us. And so many of us, we probably have some Loraxes hanging out that are, our health or our sleep or our mood. There's signs that maybe we're not being driven by healthy things. And all of these were present for me. But in trying to, hide from whatever it is that we don't want to deal with, the hard things, or make room for in our lives because it feels challenging, we end up just kind of heads down. This is what I did in my business, head down, just go. And when I finally had, less stress in my personal life after I got divorced and was able to pick my head up and look around, it was like, I did this whole thing with worried about everybody else and not myself. Like, I built an entire business trying to put the needs of my clients and my patients and, everyone else before my own, and really built, I had a wonderful practice. There were amazing things about my first business. I loved my staff. I loved, the family that we had. I loved all of my patients. I still live in the community. I still love them all. Many of them are my friends. But I was so miserable and unhealthy, and and started to show signs and symptoms of that, literally, like losing my voice and my hair falling out and, putting on weight and a lot of the things that we talked about on the show. And so what I really wanted to do, challenge you to think about, is looking at, especially because most of those who are listening to this, you are driven in some way. If you're attracted to the things I talk about and things I do, you are what we call a high achieving woman. So you have big goals, and maybe you're leading a large team of people. Maybe you own a business. Maybe you are the crazy boss of your house. Like that is okay. You still qualify as being high achieving, and you've got all this other stuff that you put on your plate. And my question for you is to really pause and think and just ask yourself, what is driving me? And are you being driven by something that is bringing you joy and filling your cup? And because that is good drive, right? Like that is when we are fulfilled by the things that we are doing, then that is in a good way. If you are feeling depleted and empty and like you're not getting filled back up, there's something off there, and you really need to ask yourself. The questions I ask myself is like, what are you avoiding dealing with in your own life? And really getting clear on what's in your heart, because this is we can, and especially when we're talking about business, which I'm starting to talk about that more on the show, and whether it's business or your career, or whatever that looks like for you, whichever world you're in or hat you wear. I forgot what I was going to say really quickly. We'll come back to it. Oh, it's it looks good on paper, right? And so we always think that, like, well, of course I need the next promotion or the next thing, or the next level. Of course we need to grow our revenue every year, and yada yada yada. My question is why? What's driving you, literally? Like, why are those things important? And so that's getting out of your head and into your heart, because our head is very much driven by the accolades, and we can analyze everything and like, oh well, of course I'll stay in this job because it pays me more, or whatever, like all of your reasons. And I've been working with a couple of my clients on this recently as well. Several of them are in the corporate world and in that transitionary period where like they're not fulfilled by their job. And I had a woman that I interviewed and shared her interview a couple of weeks ago. I'll put the link in the show notes to this one as well. But, she talks about saving your career without leaving your job. And I think that's very real, because, whoever we are and whatever we're dealing with and whatever we're trying to hide from shows up in the new things that we do. And that I've experienced that in, building the new business that I've been working on the last year and a half as well. And so we have to be willing to do the work and really get out of our head and into our heart in order to get there. And there's a great exercise I'll just share as a last piece of this, to give you something tangible to work on beyond just, rocking your boat, and have it be something you think about and then ignore again. So I call it the 7 layers deep. But, you really want to ask yourself, like, why is it important to me to whatever it is? And this is something I've been, thinking about. It could be, why is it important to me to own my own business? Why is it important to me to get this promotion? Why is it important to me to be a working mom? Why is it important to me, whatever the thing is? And then you just keep asking yourself why. So, why is it important to own a big business? Because I want to make a big impact. Why is it important to make a big impact? Because I want to, see women empowered in the world. Just go through that. The faster you answer, the more you'll get out of your head and into your heart. And usually by the 3rd or 4th time you ask why, you're starting to get what's really in your heart. And by the 7th, you should, you'll feel it. You'll feel this emotional shift and be like, oh, that's why. And so getting to that helps you attach to what really actually is driving you in a healthy way. And then the next piece is going to be having the courage to make the shift to allow that to be what drives you. And it might mean that some of the things you've been working on, or some of the trajectory you've been on, or, what you thought was important, shifts. Like I had that moment, and, it's scary, but in recognizing that and being willing to realign so that you're really being driven by the positive and deal with whatever you're trying to hide from in the rest of your life, frees up so much. Your energy will come back. You'll lose weight. You'll feel amazing. All of those things that maybe bring you to the show because your perimenopause symptoms, your menopause symptoms, your sex drive, like all of that comes as a result of being willing to do some of this internal examination and work. So on that note, I will leave you. We will see you next week with another fantabulous interview. I've had some awesome women and no men recently, but women that I've interviewed lately, and I'm looking forward to continuing to release all those. And I will be back on an individual show in 2 weeks.